Hi guys, Rob James here. One of the biggest fears people often have when considering scalp micropigmentation is this: will my SMP eventually turn blue? Well, the good news is that properly performed scalp micropigmentation should never heal into the blue, green, or blotchy appearance that people often associate with bad SMP or traditional tattooing. Over the years, I've developed a very simple way of explaining why some SMP ages beautifully and naturally, while other procedures can end up looking discolored or take on that kind of helmet head appearance. I call it the triple D principle: depth, density, darkness. If you get these three things right, your scalp micropigmentation should remain natural looking for many, many years. If you get them wrong, that's when problems can occur. So let's start with the first D, and that is depth. In my opinion, depth is the single most important factor in scalp micropigmentation. Let's remember, SMP is not a traditional tattoo. We are not trying to implement pigment deeply into the skin. In fact, one of the main reasons scalp micropigmentation can turn blue over time is simply because the pigment has been implanted too deeply into the dermis. And when pigment sits too deep, the light scatters differently through the skin. The skin almost becomes like a filter, creating that unwanted blue tone. It also is so deep that it gets spread about. This is why choosing an experienced scalp micropigmentation artist should understand implementation depth. It is absolutely critical that you get that right. The second D is density. One of the biggest mistakes I see in bad scalp micropigmentation is simply too much pigment, too many impressions, too close together, and or using a needle that is way too big. This creates an overly saturated look that may appear impressive straight immediately after it's done on Instagram, but often heals into something much less natural. The goal of natural scalp micropigmentation is not to create a solid block of pigment. The goal is to create the illusion of thousands of tiny hair follicles while still allowing the skin to kind of visually breathe. Less is often more. And finally, the third D is darkness. The hardest part for clients, because everyone wants more density and more coverage, but you have to remember that darker is not always better. One of the biggest indicators of poor scalp micropigmentation is an artist who agrees to make the treatment excessively dark. While it might look dramatic immediately after it's done, overly dark scalp micropigmentation is much more likely to age poorly and eventually appear blotchy and become increasingly noticeable over time. That's why at Rob James SMP, our philosophy has always been simple: create scalp micropigmentation that is subtle, natural, age appropriate, and designed to look good, not just today, but in 5, 10, or even 15 years from now. You will need touch-ups in between. So if you're considering scalp micropigmentation and are worried about it turning blue, remember the triple D principle: depth, density, darkness. Get those three things right, and your scalp micropigmentation should remain natural, subtle, and virtually undetectable for many years to come. I hope you found that helpful. Stay tuned for more helpful SMP tips and tricks. Cheers.